Have you ever looked up at those giant white letters spelling out Hollywood and wondered about their story? We all know the sign. It's a global icon, a symbol of dreams and movie magic. But what if I told you the original sign didn't even say Hollywood? And that for decades, the very first letters were lost, forgotten in a dusty storage unit, only to reappear and sell for a mind-boggling amount of money? Today, we're digging into the incredible, almost unbelievable true story of the original Hollywoodland sign. This isn't just about some old metal, it's a tale of ambition, decay, rediscovery, and the enduring power of a symbol. So grab your popcorn, because this is a piece of Hollywood history you've probably never heard before. Let's rewind all the way back to 1923. Los Angeles was booming, and a real estate development company, Woodruff and Schultz, had a grand vision. They were building a new upscale neighborhood in the hills above the city, and they needed a spectacular way to advertise it. Their project's name, HOLLYWOODLAND, so they decided to build a massive sign, an electric billboard to catch the eye of everyone in the basin below. Each letter was a staggering 30 feet wide and 45 feet tall, constructed from 3 by 9 foot metal squares, and held together by an intricate web of scaffolding, pipes, and wires, and at night, it came alive. The sign was studded with around 4,000 light bulbs that blinked in a sequence: Holly, then wood, then land, and finally, the full word, Hollywoodland. It was a dazzling spectacle, a beacon of progress and luxury. The total cost was about $21,000, which is over $300,000 in today's money. It was only ever meant to be temporary, a flashy advertisement scheduled to be taken down in about a year and a half. But as we know, fate had other plans. The sign quickly became more than just a real estate ad. It became a landmark, a part of the LA skyline. The Great Depression hit, the Hollywoodland company went bankrupt, and the sign was just left there. Maintenance stopped. The light bulbs were stripped by vandals. The once gleaming white letters began to rust and fall apart. The sign became a symbol of faded glamour. Perhaps the most tragic story associated with its decline happened in 1932, when a young actress named Peg Entwistle, disillusioned with her career, climbed up the letter H and ended her life. The sign became a somber monument, a stark reminder of broken dreams. By the 1940s, it was an eyesore. The letter H had completely toppled over. It looked like it said Hollywoodland. The city of Los Angeles was ready to tear it down for good. But the people of Hollywood wouldn't let it go. In 1949, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce stepped in. They offered to repair the sign, but on one condition: the land had to go. The sign was no longer about a housing tract. It represented the entire movie industry, the entire district. So the deal was struck. The last 4 letters were removed, the remaining 9 were repaired, and the modern Hollywood sign was born. But for the next few decades, the neglect continued. The wooden poles rotted, termites feasted on the structure, and the letters deteriorated. One oak crumbled and rolled down the hill, and an arsonist set fire to the bottom of the second L. By the 1970s, the sign was a wreck again. It looked more like Hollywood. It was a national embarrassment. This is where the story takes a turn, thanks to some very famous rock and roll royalty. In 1978, Hugh Hefner, the founder of Playboy, hosted a star-studded fundraiser at his mansion to save the sign. The goal was to raise $250,000 to build a brand new, permanent sign. Celebrities bought a letter each. Rocker Alice Cooper, in a fitting tribute to his friend Groucho Marx, bought an O. Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, bought an L. Warner Brothers Records bought another O. The old, dilapidated 1923 letters were finally torn down. A new, sturdy sign made of corrugated steel on a concrete foundation was erected, the one we see today. But what happened to those original, historic pieces of metal that had stood on the hill for over 50 years? Well, they were unceremoniously hauled away and, for the most part, considered scrap. Most of them were likely melted down, but not all of them. For a quarter of a century, the fate of the original letters was a mystery. Most people assumed they were gone forever, lost to history. But then in the early 2000s, a man named Dan Bliss was watching a documentary about the Hollywood sign. The film mentioned the 1978 teardown, and something clicked. Dan had been involved in the nightclub scene back in the late 70s. He remembered a promoter, a guy who went by the name of Hank Berger, bragging about owning the original Hollywoodland sign. Dan had even helped him move the giant, rusty letters into a storage unit. He realized they might still be there. He started digging, making calls, and eventually tracked down the right storage facility in Burbank. And there, covered in dust and forgotten for 25 years, were the original metal panels from the 1923 sign. It was an absolutely astounding discovery. Hank Berger, the promoter, had actually bought the sign for a small sum back in 1978 when it was being demolished. He had grand plans to take it on a cross-country tour, a sort of traveling piece of American history. He even had a deal with a car company to sponsor it, but the plans fell through, the money ran out, and the letters ended up in storage, where they sat for decades. After rediscovering them, Dan Bliss partnered with Hank to sell them. They put the entire collection up for auction on eBay in 2005. Can you guess what happened? A feeding frenzy. Collectors, history buffs, and movie fanatics from around the world wanted a piece of the magic. The bidding was intense, and when the virtual gavel finally fell, the original Hollywoodland sign letters sold for an incredible $450,000 for $100. It was bought by a man named Bill Mack, an artist from Minnesota. He wasn't just a collector, he had a vision. He wanted to use the historic metal as his canvas. For the next several years, Bill Mack painstakingly restored the corrugated metal, preserving its unique texture and history, its rust stains and bullet holes. Then he began to paint. He created stunning, three-dimensional portraits of the Golden Age movie stars Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, James Dean directly onto the metal that had once watched over their careers from the Hollywood Hills. He called the series his Hollywood Icons collection. He essentially used the symbol of Hollywood to create portraits of its greatest symbols. The artworks have since been exhibited around the world, giving these old pieces of metal a brand new life, transforming them from forgotten scrap into celebrated art. So the next time you see a picture of the Hollywood sign, remember its incredible journey. It started as a temporary ad for a housing project called HOLLYWOODLAND. It fell into ruin, became a symbol of broken dreams, was saved, and reborn. The original letters were torn down, lost, rediscovered in a storage unit, sold for a fortune, and finally transformed into works of art. It's a story that's almost as dramatic as a Hollywood movie itself. It reminds us that even things we see every day can have a secret, fascinating history just waiting to be uncovered. What other iconic landmarks do you think are hiding incredible stories? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this piece of hidden history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.